Hey there, everybody. Pastor Rick, Broadman Baptist Church, Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. This is the Broadman Word for December 13th, 2021. And we're going to talk about the killer criticism today. And as usual, this is perspectives from the devotional Radical Wisdom for a little bit longer anyway, for the rest of this year. Then we'll be switching to some other source of inspiration for these Broadman words. But listen, we are to be able to talk to each other about things. And in particular, one of the more difficult things is when we need to talk to each other about something that is not going correctly. And so the question then is, what is the difference between correction and criticism, particularly between church friends, brothers and sisters, and this time of the year, even particularly with family members, especially ones you might not see all that often, and now you're in close contact with, and things need to be talked about. So the word criticize, believe it or not, isn't found in the Bible. Most of the verses that deal with something like that use words like correction, reproof, discipline, or instruction. So the actual word for criticism we don't find in the Bible. And then we look at things like Proverbs 15:1, where when we're told a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Matthew 18:15, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. So over and over, example after example, God's word warns us against being harsh, about stirring up anger, about judging people, and over, we are told to be edifying, uplifting, positive, constructive, helpful, to come alongside folks, to even be in service to them, and many, many more things. I'm sure you get the idea from the list. So the thought then that we should issue criticisms of each other really isn't supported by the Bible. It's not that we don't have things to talk about, so to speak, and it's not that people don't do things wrong that require us to have those kinds of conversations. It's that they don't need to be critical. And so criticism then is the expression of disapproval of someone or something based on the criticizer's perceived faults or mistakes of someone else. Disapproval of someone is the problem. Now, when folks disapprove of somebody, they take the extra step of making it more, or maybe even exclusively, about the individual and what they've done, which is not what we're supposed to do. Remember, we don't disapprove of anybody, regardless of what they've said or done. We disapprove of what they've done and what they've said or how they're acting, but not them. Hard to do that if you engage in criticism. So we have issues with the sin or the sinful behavior, not of the sinful person. So what do we do then? Well, it takes patience. It takes patience and care to correct behavior rather than just come out with criticism. And it's particularly useful if whatever correction or understanding you can bring the person to can happen without criticism. Today, there's too many people ready to lash out quickly and condemn, and even my personal favorite, cancel folks for things that they may have or do that's not up to snuff or in line with some other person. That's it. We're done. And that leads to separation. There's no reconciliation there. Once you start down the road of criticism, it doesn't become about the issue anymore. It becomes about the person. And then that can lead to separation, division, even hatred, and then ultimately the favorite of today's social elite, the cancel. So we don't want to do that. we don't want to be in such a hurry of life or so wound up in all the goings on, particularly of this season, that we're unable to step back from the situation, see it for what it is, come alongside the individual, and gently with love speak words of correction, and even do so without criticizing. If we have people who are constantly criticized, it's going to end up putting a strain on the relationship. If it's a younger person, it might create in them some low self-esteem, particularly if it comes from a parent or a relative. And that can actually follow them throughout life. It's not an easy thing to get rid of once it sets in. It would show up in the individual as defensiveness, perfectionism, and depression. So we need to be really careful when we're talking to our younger folks, particularly if you're in any sort of familial or authoritative position in their life. Other times, we can be so afraid to have any sort of conversation with folks about things that might not be quite right, or even things that are definitely not right, that we shy away from it. And all the individual ever hears is overactive positivity or over-aggrandized positivity. And so that can then lead to a lack of correction where it's necessary. And over time, not only does the behavior not get fixed, but it can lead to a sense of entitlement, arrogance. It can inspire a critical spirit in that individual because they always think they're right, because obviously they've not been corrected, right? And then ultimately, it can lead to low self-esteem in them if they ever do run into correction. So the issue then for us in our speech, in our conduct with each other, is not to be afraid to have conversations that need to be had. It's to have them without criticism, and on the other side, to have them without the over-aggrandized sort of, oh, it's okay, when it's not. And then so the question for us is, the challenge is to correct, not to criticize, to be fully committed to truth and love, and to graciously and gracefully lead others to live as they're called in the truth that is absolute, not necessarily the truth as you see it, but the truth as God spoke it. Once you do that, and you take that gracious, patient, loving, speaking the truth in love, coming alongside, gentle correction, you're going to get a lot more things done, a lot more things resolved, and you're going to have a lot more close relationships as a result of it. So listen, take it easy this season. Don't be Mr. or Mrs. Critical. Not going to work. I love you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.